Look at the stats. 5 out of the top 6 televised rated games on the WNBA this year all involve Caitlin Clark. The only one that doesn't was a second half of a doubleheader in which Caitlin Clark played the first game.
Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Garrett Cole is getting ready to come back too. I guess this, look, they've played great without him, but you're not going to say to Garrett Cole, look, don't come back. I mean, it's a ridiculous conversation to have.
They're not going to take any unnecessary chances. And look, they're at the point where they have a lead. They certainly are going to make the playoffs, I would say, barring some sort of complete collapse. And that's all it takes.
NewsWire. Only on SportsGrid.
8 playoff games at home for Boston in Beantown. They are 6-2 straight up.
The wild card, I would say, in this game is not necessarily, well, what are we going to get out of Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, Brown, and certainly Tatum. It is Kristaps Porzingis to me, because we're not getting back a player that's like, hey, rotational guy. Like, remember when Derek Lively went down with the injury? He was playing well, but a young player, like a piece.
The early line. Only on Sports.
Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish. Great to be back with you here on our Tuesday morning edition of the show. We got plenty to cover here on the program, including the latest in the National Hockey League with a potential clinching game tonight in Sunrise. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes. Also, we got guest contributor from Legal Sports Report. It is Sam McQuillan, as the state of Florida officially will have sports betting through 2051 via the Seminole Tribe. In addition, we've got Jacob Camenker in the house recapping the National Basketball Association. We'll mix in some football. We'll mix in some baseball as well. And basketball is the place to start today because, folks, the season came to an end last night, and talk about anticlimactic. My gosh, the Celtics just dropped the hammer on the Dallas Mavericks. The game was not close. I'm not going to say it was over before it started, but once it started, it was over. 106-88, the final. They ended the third quarter with a 86-67 lead. When we have Simon Applebaum on the show, he's going to tell us the ratings were terrible. There's no other way to put it. Larry O'Brien Trophy all-time, 18th for the Boston Celtics. Indeed, they are the champions, and really, honestly, were not challenged all that much during the NBA playoffs. We'll talk about them going into next year as well. Jason Tatum had 31 points. Jaylen Brown, the MVP, had 21 points. Drew Holiday, 15 points, 11 rebounds, and 4 assists. So congrats to the Celtics. They end up taking home the trophy, and until next season, that will do it for the NBA. But first, let's hear from Jaylen Brown, who was, of course, a huge fan, like a lot of us were, of Bill Russell. He gets the championship trophy and also takes home the MVP of the finals.
Jaylen, knowing what Bill Russell meant to you, and to have this moment in your life and your career tied to him in that way, what does that mean?
To be honest, I can't even put it into words. Just Bill Russell and what he's meant for me through my Boston journey, and his spirit, everything that he stood for. Just for this to be the Bill Russell MVP award, and it just, I got nothing, man. I don't even know what to say. It's unreal.
Kind of funny. Jason Tatum was the finals favorite to win the MVP on FanDuel. for a long time. And then all of a sudden, the odds just completely flipped to Jaylen Brown, and Brown ended up taking home the MVP trophy. All right, now on the side of the Dallas Mavericks, very disappointing NBA Finals. But needless to say, Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving had over 1,000 points combined in the playoffs, 1,122. That's the most by any guard duo in the single postseason in the NBA Finals. Luka Doncic talked about what he learned from playing in the finals and coming up short.
What do you take away from this that will help your team get back here next year, ideally, and win it next time? Is there any particular takeaways from being in the finals?
Right now, I don't really know. It's not what I'm thinking, but they're a great team. They've been together for a long time, and they had to go through everything. So we just got to look at them, see how they play, maturity, and they have some great players. We can all learn from that, and we got to fight next season.
Dallas Mavericks will try to run it back and see who comes back to that team next year, too, with a bunch of free agents pending. As far as the Celtics are concerned, going back to them for a minute, Jason Tatum may not have won the MVP of the finals, but he could have made the case he was the best player in the finals. He was fantastic and now has a ring to show for it. And he talked about winning the championship, and it exceeded his expectations.
Being on the other side of this and losing in the finals and being at literally the lowest point in a basketball career that you could be, to next year, to the following year, thinking that was going to be the time and come up short again. So, people have said it before, but coming up short and having failures makes this moment that much better. Because you know what it feels like to lose. You know what it feels like to be on the other side of this and be in a locker room and hearing the other team celebrate and having them celebrate on your home floor. Like, that was devastating. And now, to elevate yourself in a space that all your favorite players are in, right? Everybody that they consider greats or legends have won a championship, and all the guys I looked up to won a championship, multiple championships. So now I can like walk in those rooms and be a part of that. It's a hell of a feeling. This is more. I dreamed about what it would be like, but this is 10 times better.
Good for the Celtics as they win the championship, and they just announced the parade will be later this week, I believe Friday morning, if I'm not mistaken. They just made that announcement. All right, Joe Mazzulla, meanwhile, becomes the youngest coach to win an NBA title since Bill Russell won. At the same age, in 1969, Mazzulla just 35 years old. Meanwhile, Kristaps Porzingis and the coach, Mazzulla, are going to have surgery. Porzingis will be out for a few months to get knee surgery. Mazzulla has a torn meniscus. Meanwhile, Jeff Van Gundy, former coach of the New York Knicks, spent 16 seasons on TV. He's headed back to become the Clippers' top assistant. And by the way, Celtics are favored to win the NBA championship next year, 3-1. Denver Nuggets, 7.5-1 over on the FanDuel Sportsbook. All right, tonight, the Stanley Cup is in the house in Sunrise, Florida. Can the Panthers close it out? They are minus 137 on the money line to do so against the Edmonton Oilers. That series is 3-1 Panthers, total 5.5. Jo Madden will be with us coming up in just a little bit to preview some of the topics in that game. Meanwhile, Rory McIlroy had a tough time, of course, in the U.S. Open. He makes an interesting announcement. He's taking some time off. He was scheduled to play in the Travelers Championship this coming week. Instead, he's going to take a break and post it on social media. He will, quote, rue a few things over on the course of the tournament. And naturally, this is the kind of thing that can affect you in golf. Hopefully Rory's okay. I took some shots at him yesterday. Sort of regret it. All right, Les Miles. How about Les Miles? He has a lawsuit that's alleging that the Tigers school deprived him of property rights associated with his vacated wins and potential nomination for the College Football Hall of Fame. He needs a winning percentage of 600 to qualify for that, and without those vacated wins, he sits at, get this, .597. So I think he just needs one win to try to get back from LSU. 70 years old, won the championship back in 2007, did Les Miles, who famously used to eat grass on the field. I don't know if you remember Les Miles. All right, the Yankees are getting back Garrett Cole. He's going to pitch tomorrow night against the Baltimore Orioles. He hasn't pitched at all this season. He's looked good thus far in his rehab stints, but naturally it just was rehab. It wasn't the big leagues, and the Orioles are no slouch. But Garrett Cole is back, and he will pitch tomorrow night, and we'll see what happens. Meanwhile, the Yankees are going to have to figure some things out. They did call up a young player by the name of Ben Rice. I just saw that the New York Post is reporting that this morning because Anthony Rizzo is going on the injured list, 4 to 6 weeks with an arm fracture. And I don't think they're calling this kid up to sit. Although yesterday they said DJ LeMahieu was going to play first base, so maybe they pivoted from that. I'll keep an eye on this throughout the show. Also, Trey Turner back for the Philadelphia Phillies. They win by a final score of 9-2. Turner was doing awesome before he got hurt. Edmundo Sosa was filling in. They won't need him anymore now that they have Trey Turner. Meanwhile, how about the New York Mets? The Mets have won 6 straight games. They had the grimace, the grimace from McDonald's throughout the first pitch. And since he did, they haven't lost. So they're using that as their motivation right now. They won last night, the final over Texas, by the way. Good team. 14-2 was the final. And Francisco Lindor has come alive. Brandon Nimmo has come alive. And, naturally the Mets are probably an okay team. They're playing better now than maybe they did earlier in the season. But the bottom line is they have so many still good hitters in that lineup who were not playing to the back of their baseball card for the first 2 months, so it shouldn't be all that surprising. All right, Jacob Camenker joins us here on the show. We'll put a bow on the NBA season coming up next. Stay with us here on NewsWire every Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern. We'll be back right after these messages. Don't go away.
You got Porzingis, you got Holiday, you got Derek White, you got literally, I would say what, 5 guys can get you 20 points in a game?
I know people will say it's, only one guy. I don't believe that, Coach, that, one guy, those days are over, in my opinion. Like, a Bill Russell, a Wilt Chamberlain.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
This guy is the mad scientist. I mean, he's all about green density. So in my mind, I feel like he's going to have the green speeds dialed in and the angles he needs to land them and all that sort of stuff. I feel like he's going to be a good spot and playing the course well. And he's going to be hitting less club into a lot of these par threes too. So I just, we're talking about using a live guy. I love Bryson this week. I'm riding with Bryson.
Only on SportsGrid.
He went bogey, double, par, birdie, bogey. Thomas Dietrich's all over the place here today.
This golf course is so volatile where it can make you look like a fool in just a matter of minutes. And, you look at a guy like Thomas Dietrich. He's right there tied for the lead or whatever it was, and now he's like 4 or 5 over in the wink of an eye.
In-game live, all access, only on SportsGrid.
The 5s, the 10s, the 20s, and the 40s, and you've got a couple that I love here, including a guy who has been rock solid at majors in Tom Kim.
Don't forget for a second that he finished top 5 when Phil won at Kiowa, and it's the same sort of sandy surface with push-up greens where there's a lot of awkward situational short game shots. The big rig, Harry Higgs, he was solid there, and he's playing some great golf right now.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. Let's put a bow on the NBA season. It has come to an end, and before we know it, it's going to be right back at it, of course, because the NBA feels like a year-round sport. Training camp in September, October. Season begins at the end of the month of October. Let's bring in Jacob Camenker to recap what we saw in the NBA Finals. And, Jacob, one of the least interesting finals, and let's just be honest, a really long time. Like, the games were just, not compelling. Even though, last year's series was similar in the way that Denver dominated Miami, I don't know. It just felt different. You had Nikola Jokic playing at a very high level. I don't. There was just something missing about this series. Now, it takes nothing away from the Boston Celtics. They played fantastic. They were the best team in the NBA from start to finish. But just these games, Jacob, were just not that close, you know. And I maybe that's why. I don't know. But to me, it was a disappointing finals.
There certainly wasn't much drama in these finals. You know, we kind of came in. There was a lot of exciting storylines with Kyrie Irving going back to Boston, playing against his former team. Kristaps Porzingis playing against his former team. You know, we were hoping to see some greatness from Luka Doncic, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Kyrie too. All these guys had the potential to, you know, be great and keep these games close, but all the games felt like blowouts, like you said. They were sort of out of reach. I know Dallas fought back in a few of the first games to make it close late before Boston pulled away again in all three of those, but there just really wasn't much drama. The Celtics kind of went up 3-0, so I can definitely sympathize with those who say it's not an exciting finals, because it really wasn't. There wasn't too much drama, which I know Celtics fans will be happy about, because there was too much drama with the Celtics for about 5 years there. But I definitely think that there's something to the fact that these games just weren't close, weren't competitive, despite on paper being an intriguing matchup.
Yeah, I mean, not one game came down to like the final minute or two of the game. You know, like even in a sweep, if you get really close games, I guess similar to maybe the Knicks and Pacers, like at least the games are close, you know, and you know, these just weren't. Okay, so Jaylen Brown wins the MVP. Tatum was initially the favorite to win the MVP, and then Jaylen Brown took over. Do you feel that was the right call here? I know that the odds shifted significantly, so people who got ahead of that ended up making some money on Brown. Do you think he deserved it?
I think it was a true coin flip between him and Tatum. I don't think you can go wrong. I know that's a boring answer. I think a lot of people will say, well, look at the closeout game. Jason Tatum had a 31-point double-double. He had 2 31-point games in these finals, and he led the team in points, rebounds, and assists, so why wouldn't he get it? I think the tie-breaking factor here was Jaylen Brown was more efficient in the first 3 games when they really needed him to be, when Tatum's shot wasn't falling as much. And Brown played stellar defense throughout the entire series. He kind of bodied up on Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving more than anyone else. I know the Celtics switch everything, so it's kind of hard to give him all the credit there, but he kind of led the defensive effort there, and I think that the defense was what keyed the Celtics to victory. They frustrated Luka Doncic. They limited Kyrie Irving. That's why the Celtics were able to win. Their offense was at times ugly, as it has been, because they sometimes just forget to move the ball, which is how their whole offense, you know, performs well. But their defense almost never wavered, except that entire lack of anything that they put forth in Game 4. But in their 4 wins, their defense was stellar. And the Celtics, when they held teams to 100 or fewer points in this playoffs, they are 15-0. So I think that just speaks to the importance and the fact that, hey, defense wins championships.
Yeah, indeed it does. All right, so Joe Mazzulla wins his first championship, 35 years old. Remember, he took over the team in some strange circumstances. There's no question about that. Youngest head coach to win since Bill Russell won at the age of 35 years old. So, you know, obviously this is pretty significant and a trend that we're seeing, by the way, Jacob, not just in the NBA, but in all sports. Younger guys are getting these gigs.
Yeah, and I think the youth just allows them to relate to the players a little bit more. I think you could see that the Celtics really backed Joe Mazzulla. They knew that he was thrown into a tough circumstance, and he was expected to lead the team to the finals basically straight away. And once he didn't deliver, he was all of a sudden under the gun. People were saying he's not the guy that you can trust to lead this team. He's too young. He's too inexperienced. He doesn't have the same ability to draw up plays that Brad Stevens and Ime Udoka did. But, you know, he continued to improve as he was really in the head coaching job, which you don't see often. He was thrown into the fire. The Celtics got him some veteran coaching help, Sam Cassell, Charles Lee this offseason. And I think that kind of stabilized things and allowed Mazzulla to kind of be his own guy, knowing that he had the confidence in the backing of Brad Stevens. So it was an impressive feat for him to accomplish this, and for him to be the one to get this Celtics team over the top. I think if you had asked people about this last year, they would have said they got to get someone else. And now Joe Mazzulla is on top of the coaching world, and he's clearly an up-and-coming star.
I haven't heard much talk of Ime Udoka. I'm sure some shows brought it up and stuff like that, but I didn't really hear much about him. I mean, honestly, kind of his team in a way too. Okay, so Celtics 18 championships, Lakers 17 championships, Warriors 7, Bulls 6. We know when that happened. San Antonio Spurs 5. We know that was the Robinson Duncan era. Maybe the Wemby era will come in, and so naturally the Lakers, potentially on deck to get the next one. But as we move ahead and take a look at the odds to win the NBA championship next year, you don't see the Lakers anywhere near there. So my guess is the Lakers are going to have to wait at least for this next round of great players because the LeBron era is coming to an end there. When you look at that, Jacob, and you see Denver at plus 750, is it tempting for you like it is for me? Like, I don't know what happened to Denver at the end of that playoff series, but I said, I think it was to Coach Young we had here on the show last week, Jacob. I said, I think Denver would have given Boston a better matchup. And that's disrespectful, I know, to Dallas, but I just feel that way.
No, I think you're right. And the Nuggets have that postseason experience, the finals experience. They're a finals winning team. I think they fell into the trap this past year where they weren't as hungry in the postseason and went up against a really young, really hungry Minnesota Timberwolves squad that didn't know that they were supposed to lose to the Nuggets, sort of. So I could see backing them. The Celtics are kind of hard to back right now because you think, oh, they're going to still be great. They're going to bring this whole team back. But will that hunger be there or will they fall short? So I would definitely back the Nuggets at 7.5 to 1 odds. It seems like a good bet.
Yeah, agreed. All right, Jacob, great to catch up with you. And you and I will be talking about something else next week. That's for sure. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Craig. Take care.
You got Porzingis, you got Holiday, you got Derek White, you got literally, I would say what, 5 guys can get you 20 points in a game?
I know people will say it's, only one guy. I don't believe that, Coach, that, one guy, those days are over, in my opinion. Like, a Bill Russell, a Wilt Chamberlain.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
This guy is the mad scientist. I mean, he's all about green density. So in my mind, I feel like he's going to have the green speeds dialed in and the angles he needs to land them and all that sort of stuff. I feel like he's going to be a good spot and playing the course well. And he's going to be hitting less club into a lot of these par threes too. So I just, we're talking about using a live guy. I love Bryson this week. I'm riding with Bryson.
Only on SportsGrid.
He went bogey, double, par, birdie, bogey. Thomas Dietrich's all over the place the other day.
This golf course is so volatile where it can make you look like a fool in just a matter of minutes. And, you look at a guy like Thomas Dietrich. He's right there tied for the lead or whatever it was, and now he's like 4 or 5 over in the wink of an eye.
In-game live, all access, only on SportsGrid.
The 5s, the 10s, the 20s, and the 40s, and you've got a couple that I love here, including a guy who has been rock solid at majors in Tom Kim.
Don't forget for a second that he finished top 5 when Phil won at Kiowa, and it's the same sort of sandy surface with push-up greens where there's a lot of awkward situational short game shots. The big rig, Harry Higgs, he was solid there, and he's playing some great golf right now.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. What's fun about winning a championship in professional sports is there's always a player or two on a championship team that is of the older variety, probably toward the end of their career, chasing down that ring. And the Celtics have one of those too. That, of course, is Al Horford, who's played for, it feels like 20 years in the NBA. I remember him playing for my University of Florida Gators. But Horford does capture the championship and talked about winning. And a former Celtic once told him what it's like to win and recap that moment.
It was crazy because during free agency meetings in 2016, my agent and I, Jason Glushan, we were both sitting in the meeting, and we just kept looking at this enormous ring in Wick's hand, and we were just kind of, and we both after the meeting were like, "Did you notice that?" Like it was just that was the attention, and it's like, man, I never forget what Danny Ainge told me in that meeting. He said, "You can win championships in many places, but there's nothing like winning in Boston, and nothing like winning as a Celtic." And that stuck with me from that meeting. And I was like, man, like I'm trying to be great, and that's what I want. And the fact that it has happened. JT, JB stepping up in a big way and leading us. It's special.
Great to see Al Horford win a championship. There's some speculation that he will continue to play next year in the NBA. But of course, now, if he does decide to retire, we'll end up having that NBA championship ring. So congrats to him. Also has got college basketball rings as well for winning at the University of Florida. All right, now let's check in on the very latest in the offseason of the National Football League. In fact, OTAs, off-season training activities, are coming and going in different places. One of them that we're going to focus on, of course, is New York. We're going to take a look at the New York Giants, where they invested a very high draft pick in a wide receiver named Malik Nabers. And according to Logan Glover from our social media team, he is turning heads and reminds everyone of a former Giant.
Malik Nabers has been all the buzz at Giants training camp so far. The 5th overall pick is making sensational catches that are making Giants fans reminisce about another LSU first-round receiver, OBJ. But can Nabers live up to those lofty expectations? Nabers' over-under on FanDuel is currently set at 850.5 receiving yards, a mark that OBJ blew out of the water his rookie year with 1,300 yards in only 12 games, winning Offensive Rookie of the Year. There's reasons to believe Nabers can have similar production, but also reasons to believe that it may be a little far-fetched. Firstly, Nabers had significantly better college production with over 300 more yards than Beckham in both his sophomore and junior seasons. However, OBJ was playing his rookie year with two-time Super Bowl champion Eli Manning, while Nabers is playing with Daniel Jones, who has never thrown for more than 3,300 yards and is coming off a torn ACL. So will Nabers be the next great Giants rookie receiver, or will he be stuck in the shadow of OBJ?
We'll see what happens with the Giants in their offseason as well, but I don't think there's any question that Odell Beckham Jr., even to this day, one of the more popular Giants that they've had over the past, let's say, decade or so. They've been looking for another wide receiver. If you may remember, they spent some money in free agency. Nothing seemed to work out. Maybe Nabers will end up being that guy. All right, yesterday was a reunion of sorts for Jacob deGrom and the Texas Rangers visiting the New York Mets, a place where deGrom shined for many years as a Met before signing on with the Rangers. Of course, deGrom has not pitched yet this season, but talked about some of the memories and being in the Mets organization.
Miss us?
Yeah, I miss you, Steve. I'm forever thankful to the Mets organization. I've said that before. They drafted me, and I spent 9 years of my career there. So, definitely enjoyed my time there. And, when I was a Met, the goal was to go out and put the team in a position to win and leave it all out on the field. And, that's what I tried to do every fifth day. So I'm thankful for the opportunity that that organization gave me.
Have you thought about, with the Rangers scheduled to come to Citi Field next year, what your first trip back there will be like?
Honestly, I haven't thought about it. I thought I was going to get to play there last year, and unfortunately, ended up having to get surgery. So, that'll be interesting. The fans were always great to me there, and like I said, my goal was to always leave it all out on the field and for the team and for the fans. So now the goal is to get back healthy and do that here.
We'll see if he can. The Texas Rangers are expected to get deGrom back toward the end of the baseball season. We'll take a quick time out here on the show. When we come back next, it's time to check in with Sam McQuillan from Legal Sports Report, the state of Florida, with a huge ruling yesterday in favor of the Seminole tribe. What does it mean for sports betting in the future? Find out next. We'll be right back.
got Porzingis, you got Holiday, you got Derek White, you got literally, I would say what, 5 guys can get you 20 points in a game?
I know people will say it's, only one guy. I don't believe that, Coach, that, one guy, those days are over, in my opinion. Like, a Bill Russell, a Wilt Chamberlain.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
This guy is the mad scientist. I mean, he's all about green density. So in my mind, I feel like he's going to have the green speeds dialed in, and the angles he needs to land them and all that sort of stuff. I feel like he's going to be a good spot and playing the course well. And he's going to be hitting less club into a lot of these par threes too. So I just, we're talking about using a live guy. I love Bryson this week. I'm riding with Bryson.
Only on SportsGrid.
He went bogey and double, par, birdie, bogey. Thomas Dietrich's all over the place the other day.
This golf course is so volatile where it can make you look like a fool in just a matter of minutes. And, you look at a guy like Thomas Dietrich. He's right there tied for the lead or whatever it was, and now he's like 4 or 5 over in the wink of an eye.
In-game live, all access, only on SportsGrid.
The 5s, the 10s, the 20s, and the 40s, and you've got a couple that I love here, including a guy who has been rock solid at majors in Tom Kim.
Don't forget for a second that he finished top 5 when Phil won at Kiowa, and it's the same sort of sandy surface with push-up greens where there's a lot of awkward situational short game shots. The big rig, Harry Higgs, he was solid there, and he's playing some great golf right now.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. The state of Florida has now had sports betting for approximately a year, and that is going to continue, but it only will continue via the Hard Rock app, a monumental ruling yesterday for the Seminole Tribe for the state of Florida. Let's bring in Sam McQuillan for the latest on that. And Sam, this is not a huge surprise. I think we thought that this was not going to get overturned. This group, West Flagler, who was fighting to not even have legalized sports betting at all, they didn't want it. They ended up losing. And I guess the question that I would have for you as we start here is, do you think that the Seminole Tribe will be willing to take on other vendors before 2051, which is they have this exclusivity going?
Yeah, Craig, that's a long time away. So a lot of things can change, obviously, in the next 30 years. But even before we get to that point, they've already suggested that, hey, maybe never say never. We're willing, we're open to working with operators like DraftKings, FanDuel, even Penn that have in the past advocated and tried to expand sports betting in the state via the ballot. They've tried there. Obviously, the only successful way that sports betting was legalized and passed in Florida was through that compact with the Seminole Tribe that runs Hard Rock Bets. So that's the only thing Floridians have for now. But as you allude to, this ruling could open them up for future maybe partners, maybe sharing the state in some way. But they'd obviously want to get a lot of money out of that agreement, however it would work.
Yeah, and I think, Sam, when you look at it, the other part of this is that, do you think that the success that the state of Florida has, or at least the Seminole Tribe has, will relate to what could potentially happen in California, or is it an apples and oranges conversation?
Yeah, it's always a little bit of apples to oranges, even when you're just talking state to state, and then you talk tribe to tribe. But California and Florida specifically, California has so many more tribes than Florida. What happened here is there was sort of a group of tribes that was kind of left out of the agreement originally, was upset about that, and then tried to challenge it. So this rule, the impact of this ruling, I would say, would be bigger than the actual success model that the people who are running the app have on California. The impact of this ruling essentially is saying that, hey, tribes, you guys should go in with more assurance, more power, knowing that the Supreme Court isn't going to take up a case like this. Essentially, what they were challenging is saying, okay, just because you have servers on tribal land that accept bets from anywhere in the state, that doesn't mean that you're actually taking those bets on tribal land. That's kind of how they got around or worked around this gaming compact, which only allows you to take bets on tribal land. So if I'm a tribe in California, I'm definitely looking at the decision yesterday not to take up the case as a sign that maybe these things are legit. Maybe this is a real path forward for us in the state. Now, it's kind of like a tentacle. It has rippling effects throughout the industry. If you're an operator like FanDuel or DraftKings, you're looking at Hard Rock and what they did partnering with the Seminoles, saying, wow, this worked for them. They're making a lot of money out of it. We know we're the best at doing this. We're going to try to sell ourselves as that operator that really knows what they're doing to these tribes. So you saw gaming stocks soar about 6%, most of them yesterday on Wall Street, which is really interesting because they've been down for a while lately. So it seems like the impact of this ruling has Wall Street thinking that DraftKings, FanDuel, maybe even a Penn could go into a state like California, maybe a state like Minnesota, where it's not as high stakes, and partner with these tribes the way that Hard Rock has done with the Seminoles. And it's kosher. There's nothing to worry about. So there's a lot of moving parts here, but it kind of signals that maybe this is where things are going. Maybe Florida could now do iGaming eventually in the future, since they kind of have this blessing from the Supreme Court that says we're not going to mess with this. So obviously everything can change, especially in the next 30 years, but it's a good sign for Florida, and then good sign for the gaming companies that, want to take advantage of this route.
Yeah, and speaking of Penn, I'm glad you mentioned them. There's a lot of discussion about them as well. They threw the ESPN logo on them, took it over from Barstool basically, and created ESPN Bet, just simply thinking, hey, look, we got this brand, we're going to succeed. I know you and I were both sort of skeptical of this, but the skepticism has even taken a deeper turn here, and I wonder what the future is going to hold here for ESPN Bet.
Yeah, definitely, Craig. I would count you and I as among the biggest skeptics. And even our predictions, our skepticism has kind of been beaten by these bad results. ESPN Bet has only held around 6% of the market, and that's being generous in the past several months. So it's really not taking off the way the company had kind of hoped for it, the way that CEO Penn Snowden, or the CEO of Penn, Jay Snowden, had said when they were making that huge bet on ESPN. Meanwhile, ESPN is really soaring in terms of their subscribers and numbers they have. I think they had about 2/3 of Americans, they said, were subscribed or following ESPN in some way. Meanwhile, ESPN Bet only has about 685,000 monthly active users. So there's still a lot of room to grow there. It's how are you doing that? When is that going to happen? What does that look like? They've talked about NFL season as being their, big key for when they're going to ramp up things, when they're really going to see the return on investment, whether that's diving into ESPN's fantasy assets or just, trying more promos. They have a lot kind of left on the table they're trying to assure investors about. But investors, meanwhile, are calling for the company to sell because of these interactive losses, where it's just been a lot of money being thrown at the wall and not many results. Some speculated Boyd could be interested in getting into this, the Penn business, since they just appointed someone to their board with 25 years of experience who has a lot of time working with gaming companies and acquiring gaming companies. They've said they want to acquire another company for the right price. So we'll see if the price point gets better with the lackluster ESPN Bet results. We'll see how the ESPN Bet agreement ties into that whole thing. But it could be another messy year in terms of companies changing hands. Obviously, last year we had Barstool going away in favor of ESPN Bet. We had PointsBet being bought by Fanatics. Last summer was a crazy summer. This summer could be just as crazy if Penn and ESPN sell to a company like Boyd.
Yeah, no, it could be. And again, that would be a big disappointment, but it could be the right move. We'll see. All right, so this new sports integrity partnership, Genius Sports, is involved in this. More protection, suspicious betting activity. I like to learn more about these stories because it means that there's more regulation and more people paying attention to sports betting, Sam. So tell us more about this.
Yeah, definitely. Genius Sports is essentially the company that partners with leagues worldwide, whether that's the NFL, the Premier League, to provide betting technology, monitoring services between the bets being taken on the league and the sports books themselves. So they're kind of an intermediary. And they announced yesterday that they're going to be partnering with the International Betting Integrity Association. essentially becoming a member. And they said that's going to allow them to beef up their protection and add more integrity monitoring tools to essentially catch bad behavior before it happens. This comes obviously after a just ton of scandals we've had across sports betting lately, whether it's the MLB umpire Pat Hoberg being disciplined for violating the league's betting policy, whether it's the lifetime ban that was handed down to the Padres infielder a few weeks before that, and several other Major League Baseball players that were suspended, whether it's Jonte Porter in the NBA, whether it's Shohei Ohtani's. And I could go on and on with all the violations we've had lately. So it's nice to see a company getting into the forefront, trying to add more protection services. It's not exactly clear what they'll be doing, but they said that it's going to allow them to work together to essentially figure out a solution to solve all this madness that has plagued the industry over the past month. So we'll have to see what more they announce in the partnership, but hopefully good things to come in terms of integrity monitoring services.
Yeah, the monitoring is obviously key as long as they're professional athletes that are not following the rules. These are the safeguards that have to be in place for that. Thanks again, Sam, for coming on NewsWire. Have a great rest of your week.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. You too.
All right, Sam McQuillan with us. LegalSportsReport.com is the website. You can read more about everything we discuss over there. Coming up next, it's Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Finals. Is it a clinching night for the Florida Panthers? The cup is in the house. Jo Madden will join us next, and we'll preview the game and take a look at some player individual props as well. We'll be right back.
You got Porzingis, you got Holiday, you got Derek White. You got literally, I would say what? 5 guys can get you 20 points in a game?
I know people will say it's, only one guy. I don't believe that, Coach, that, one guy, those days are over, in my opinion. Like, a Bill Russell, a Wilt Chamberlain.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
This guy is the mad scientist. I mean, he's all about green density. So in my mind, I feel like he's going to have the green speeds dialed in and the angles he needs to land them and all that sort of stuff. I feel like he's going to be a good spot and playing the course well. And he's going to be hitting less club into a lot of these par threes too. So I just, we're talking about using a live guy. I love Bryson this week. I'm riding with Bryson.
Only on SportsGrid.
He went bogey, double, par, birdie, bogey. Thomas Dietrich's all over the place the other day.
This golf course is so volatile where it can make you look like a fool in just a matter of minutes. And, you look at a guy like Thomas Dietrich. He's right there tied for the lead or whatever it was, and now he's like 4 or 5 over in the wink of an eye.
In-game live, all access, only on SportsGrid.
The 5s, the 10s, the 20s, and the 40s, and you've got a couple that I love here, including a guy who has been rock solid at majors in Tom Kim.
Don't forget for a second that he finished top 5 when Phil won at Kiowa, and it's the same sort of sandy surface with push-up greens where there's a lot of awkward situational short game shots. The big rig, Harry Higgs, he was solid there, and he's playing some great golf right now.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. Will we get a Stanley Cup champion tonight in South Florida? It's possible. Cup is in the house. Let's check in with Jo Madden, of course, of SportsGrid. And Joe, at least the NHL season got to a 5th game. I don't think a lot of people thought that would happen, but Edmonton, boy, they did what we thought they would do a little bit in the finals and put up an 8 spot on Florida in the last game. Thanks again for coming on the show. It was a really impressive performance, but the odds are certainly telling us that may not be a repeat performance tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Edmonton, with their backs up against the wall in that last game, came out just on fire. 15 of their 18 skaters were able to record at least 1 point. Now, they did change up some of their lines, every line except for the third, and it really did work for them there in Edmonton. Their desperation level really showed in that game, and that game was over by the end of the first period. The Florida Panthers just didn't have what it took in that game. I think they came into it a little bit lax, thinking that they were going to be able to dominate in that one versus Edmonton, and didn't realize how strong Edmonton was going to be with those change-ups. So it was very impressive out of Edmonton. We finally saw Connor McDavid have that game that we were expecting out of him during the playoffs, and we'll see coming back to Florida tonight. I do think there's a possibility this ends tonight.
Yeah, and a lot of people feel that way tonight on FanDuel especially. This line just keeps moving up, 120, 130. Now we see minus 140 over on the FanDuel Sportsbook. So that's the dynamic there. Let's take a look real quick, Joe, and we'll get your opinion on what ends up happening here, side total, etc. How about anytime goal scorer here? As we take a look at some of the plus odds, we've got an opportunity here, not just for Connor McDavid, who's plus 160, but a lot of other opportunities as well. Is there anyone in particular that stands out to you tonight that could potentially put one through the net?
You know, I'm looking at the plus 200 on Matthew Tkachuk here. Matthew Tkachuk has been so phenomenally strong during the playoffs over his career. In 5 straight playoff series, he's been able to score a goal. Now here versus the Edmonton Oilers, we're yet to see him be able to score that goal. And I do think the step up is coming in this game at home tonight. I'm looking for a strong performance out of him and for him to be able to light the lamp. So at plus 200, I think the value is right there with Matthew Tkachuk. You look at him in the playoffs, 5 goals so far and 15 assists. He's been strong. It's just so much value for him in this one.
Yeah, and I think that that's a great call from you. Let's talk a little bit about Alexander Barkov, who was injured earlier in the series and has come back strong for the Florida Panthers. And Joe, a lot of people feel that without Barkov, the Panthers don't win. Now, their goaltender has been fantastic, but you see what can happen in any game. I mean, he gave up a ton of goals before he got pulled in the last one. What does Barkov mean to the Panthers?
Barkov is everything to the Florida Panthers here, and this is why people were so heated when he went off that ice with that hit by Leon Draisaitl, because Barkov comes out here and he's the best two-way player out there on the ice. He's able to shut down Connor McDavid and put that pressure on him, not allowing him to get free in these games. Barkov only has 1 goal and 3 assists in this series here, 7 goals and 14 assists in the playoffs as a whole. And I do think in this game tonight, you've got to look at him to be impactful. 2+ points for Barkov coming in here at plus 255. I think the writing's on the wall for him to take the Conn Smythe as well. He's such a phenomenally strong player. If he can come out and do what we saw out of him in game 2 and game 3, because game 1 wasn't solid for him. Game 4, we saw the Edmonton Oilers just steamroll over, but Barkov has been phenomenal during the whole playoffs here.
Yeah, he has. And, speaking of which, let's skip ahead and take a look at the odds to win the Conn Smythe, because that has been the biggest line movement. Very similar, by the way, Joe, in the NBA to the NHL, where Florida's goaltender, Sergei Bobrovsky, was a huge favorite to win. But after the last game, Barkov has basically matched him. So it's plus 105 for Bob, plus 105, minus 105 for Bob, plus 105 for Barkov. And then if somehow Edmonton was to come back and win this one and win the next one and then win the other one, you can get Connor McDavid at 7-1. But I think you make a great point here. It's trending toward a different Conn Smythe winner than we thought a week ago.
Yeah, it's crazy how much these odds really did move. I remember seeing Bobrovsky at minus 430 and Barkov at plus 420-ish, sitting in that range. So with them so tight right now, I do think the value is on Barkov, especially if we look at this game tonight. And if Bobrovsky allows in 3-4 goals and Florida still gets the win, I really do think it will be Barkov getting that award. So I think at plus 105, there's value on Barkov. Now, Bobrovsky's played elite during the playoffs, and I understand why he was the clear favorite here. He's been strong, and he's been able to bounce back in these games off those losses. We saw it in 2 series so far in the playoffs for Bobrovsky versus the Bruins and versus the Rangers. He took those big losses, coming back in the next game, winning it 6-1. So I am expecting Bobrovsky to come out nice and strong in this one, but he can't hold Barkov out of the conversation.
All right, let's end with Edmonton real quick. Let's go to Connor McDavid, who certainly came alive in the last game, Joe. And when he was the first pick overall, I mean, these were the moments that we've been waiting for. How will he be judged after this series if the Panthers win tonight?
You've got to tip your hat to Connor McDavid and everything he's been able to do out there. He came against a hot goalie in Bobrovsky in game one. We've seen Connor McDavid play excellent during the playoffs, and he just found a team that was able to isolate him out there with Barkov. So in the last game, he was able to get those 4 points on the board. I don't think anyone can talk bad about him. I'm expecting him to come out in this game and find 2+ points at -102. Edmonton's going to bring everything they can in this game. I'm expecting a higher scoring game, these big stars to get on the board. So give me Connor McDavid 2+ points tonight. I hope he goes out holding his head high if this is the last game of this series.
All right, you said if, Joe, 30 seconds. Is it if or when? Is tonight the last night of the season?
I really think it is. I think Bobrovsky has that bounce back game, and I think the Florida Panthers bring everything that they can. That smothering defense comes back into play, but Edmonton will make a game of it. I would love to see this one go to 6. I just don't think it's happening tonight.
All right, Joe. Once again, great stuff. If it does, we'll talk to you then. Thanks again for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Best of luck tonight, everyone.
All right, Jo Madden with us. We'll take a quick break. We got some last licks coming up next. A former player in the NBA. Some good bloodlines. Could be a player going to college football, too. Don't go away.
You got Porzingis, you got Holiday, you got Derek White, you got literally, I would say what, 5 guys who can get you 20 points in a game?
I know people will say it's, only one guy. I don't believe that, Coach, that, one guy, those days are over, in my opinion. Like, a Bill Russell, a Wilt Chamberlain.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
This guy is the mad scientist. I mean, he's all about green density. So in my mind, I feel like he's going to have the green speeds dialed in, and the angles needs to land them and all that sort of stuff. I feel like he's going to be in a good spot and playing the course well. And he's going to be hitting less club into a lot of these par threes too. So I just, we're talking about using a live guy. I love Bryson this week. I'm riding with Bryson.
Only on SportsGrid.
He went bogey, double, par, birdie, bogey. Thomas Dietrich's all over the place here today.
This golf course is so volatile where it can make you look like a fool in just a matter of minutes. And, you look at a guy like Thomas Dietrich. He's right there tied for the lead or whatever it was, and now he's like 4 or 5 over in the wink of an eye.
In-game live, all access, only on SportsGrid.
The 5s, the 10s, the 20s, and the 40s, and you've got a couple that I love here, including a guy who has been rock solid at majors in Tom Kim.
Don't forget for a second that he finished top 5 when Phil won at Kiowa, and it's the same sort of sandy surface with push-up greens where there's a lot of awkward situational short game shots. The big rig, Harry Higgs, he was solid there, and he's playing some great golf right now.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. We've got a number of topics to cover here as we wrap up the show. Of course, a sports betting topic surrounding golf, also some bloodlines in the NBA and the NFL. And naturally, we put a bow on the championship for the Boston Celtics, that and more. It's time now for some last licks. All right, we flip over card number 1, and there he is, Al Horford, the former Florida Gator, wins an NBA championship. Why are we ending on Al Horford, you may ask? Well, he is the first player from the Dominican Republic to win an NBA championship. How cool is that? I mean, you think of, especially Major League Baseball, with the amount of players that are from the Dominican Republic and how many championships have been won. First time ever in the NBA. And by the way, fair to say for Al Horford, even at this age and at this stage of his career, still a pretty solid contributor to a Boston Celtics team. It's not like he's like the 14th man out of 13 off the bench in the NBA. Actually, like, plays a little bit too. So congratulations to him. And a really cool message, I think, for all kids at the Dominican Republic too, is that there were other sports out there. I mean, you could try to play in the NBA, NFL. I know baseball is always going to be the predominant sport there in that country, but really nice story, I think, as well. And championship for the Boston Celtics. Naturally, the NBA draft is next week, believe it or not, and then the NBA offseason starts, and we're going to have free agency and everything else. But congrats to the Celtics for winning that championship. Oh, parade on Friday, too. Almost forgot about that. All right, former NBA player, speaking of which, another one from South Florida, I may add, Florida International University, Raja Bell. Do you remember Raja Bell, who played in the NBA for a number of years? Great defensive player, fair to say, in the NBA. Well, he has a son. His name is Dia Bell, D-I-A, okay? And he is going to play college football, and he's going to play at the University of Texas. How about that? The number 21 overall player in all of college football is ranked by one of these recruiting services, 247 Sports. We'll give them credit. Also, the number 4 quarterback in the 2026 recruiting rankings, and he will be in the Texas program. And so, these stories too are really cool because it just goes to show you, like, you can play professional sports at such a high level. Like, you would think that a player who made it all the way to the NBA would have a son that is going to follow in his footsteps, but instead probably liked, college football, watching college football, watching pro football a little bit more, and now gets to be a signal caller at the University of Texas. And by the way, if you're going to be a quarterback at any college football school, you would probably put Texas in the conversation of being one of the most prominent. So congrats to Raja Bell and his son Dia for heading over to Texas. All right, congrats in order to Bryson DeChambeau, who won the U.S. Open on Sunday. But how about the story from the Washington Post talking about all the fans who were just heckling Bryson? In fact, there was one fan who said, and I guess the Post was there to hear it, "Hey, Bryson, I got $100 on you to shoot over 70.5." And DeChambeau was like looking at this heckler, looking around. And basically the story, you should read it in the Washington Post, just talks about the state of sports betting and how it just doesn't apply to our traditional sports like the NFL or the NBA or Major League Baseball. Golf is becoming a hugely popular sport to bet on. And now you'll literally have people who are on the course, not just in Arizona at the Phoenix Open, but even at the U.S. Open, who are heckling golfers because you can bet on basically anything on FanDuel and DraftKings. You can bet on top 20s, top 10s, matchups, everything else. I mean, the sports books, they do a phenomenal job of setting a lot of different options and positions for these lines. But for DeChambeau in particular, guy has matured a lot and has really come into his own, played great at the PGA Championship, and glad he didn't get mixed up in that action at the golf course at Pinehurst. All right, that'll do it for our show today. Thanks again to Jo Madden for breaking down tonight's Stanley Cup Finals game. Also appreciate Jacob Camenker from Sporting News, as well as Sam McQuillan from Legal Sports Report. Coming up next here on SportsGrid, we've got the early line, followed by Scott Farrell, Coast to Coast. That's at 3 o'clock Eastern, so make sure you stay tuned for that show at 3, followed by Game Time Decisions and In-Game Live Prime Time. And then tonight, it all wraps up and begins again tomorrow, to be honest with you, with Gabe on Sports Rage. And that's the show tonight. For my associate producer, Frank, and for my producer, Michael, I'm Craig Mish. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. We'll see you tomorrow and see if the Panthers win the Stanley Cup Final. Will there be a parade in my hometown later this week? We'll see. We'll tell you tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody. See you then.